And just like that, our Wolf box has the attachment on the back with the back plate, and it's ready to be mounted in the car. Waiting for this to turn on. There's our rear feed. So that's my pliers in the trunk. That's what you're seeing. And then when you flip through it, you're seeing the front and the rear, and this is both front and rear. The rear view mirror is fully installed. And that's all you need to know, guys. That's pretty much the whole video. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Okay, bye. Hello and welcome back to the channel, guys. This is my new RX 350. It's a 2013. I'm just kidding. No, my GX is sitting back there. This is actually my dad's car here. So the reason I have his car today is actually I'm installing a mod that I've enjoyed so much on my car that I've installed it on a few others at this point. And it's the G840S Wolf box rear view mirror and camera. Essentially, it works as a display. It shows you what's going on in front of the car, in the rear of the car, and it's been such a great thing to have, especially when you have a long SUV like mine, just to be able to see out the back, huge game changer. And the fact that it's in the rear view mirror display makes it that much more better and seamless. And I'll be getting into all the things that I do when I'm installing something electrical like this, since I've done this multiple times. So everything that you'll need for the install is pretty much on the table here before you. You have screwdriver. I have both a Torx, a T15, and a Phillips bit that I'm going to be using. The Torx is to remove the rear view mirror. The Phillips is to install the new rear view mirror bracket, which is over there. You're going to need a 10mm socket on a ratchet or whatever you prefer, to be honest. This is going to be to remove the bolt in the fuse box area in the driver's side footwell. I'm going to need to remove that so that I could attach the ground for the camera for the Hardwire kit. You got wire cutters, obviously for anything that I'll need to cut along the way. If there's some wires or if there's zip ties, most likely that'll be all I'll need it for. This right here is actually a tester. So this has a probe on here, and if you have this connected to the positive or negative and touch this to the opposite, whether it's positive or negative, you'll be able to get a light on here that comes on and shows you that you have power at that point. We're going to be using this to kind of just demonstrate how you would find something that's on key power or on ignition power, as opposed to something that just constantly has power in the driver's footwell fuse box area. You'll obviously need one of these little plastic pry tools. These are little double-sided cable organizer clips. But this, along with the zip ties, the clip puller, and that little trim remover pry tool, that all came with the Hardwire kit. So this Hardwire kit, essentially what it has is one of these battery protectors. A lot of cars, modern cars today, already have that in place where it'll cut off power to everything if the battery drops below a certain voltage. So it'll protect the battery so that when you get into the car and you want to start it, it's not dead. But I don't really trust that so much. I've heard in some cases it cuts off the voltage way too late and then ends up just not having enough for when you're starting up the car. So this right here, it'll protect the battery, and it'll make sure to cut off the voltage at a good point at which you'll still be able to get into the car and start it up. And what this fuse tab does is, after you plug it in to whatever port you're utilizing, you have a separate fuse for whatever is working from this Hardwire kit. In our case, that would be the rear view camera. And then you have this fuse port where you're going to be putting the original fuse that you took out to plug this in. So it gives the protection as from the factory to whatever that was powering. In our case, it's going to be the cigarette lighter. And it also gives protection to the camera so that this fuse blows if anything happens and it doesn't damage the car itself. Wolf box adapter kit that you could attach to the back of the rear view mirror. This is so that you can install it instead of the factory mirror. It's actually bigger than the original rear view mirror. So that'll give you a little more visibility for when you're not using the video feed with the auto dimming features, with all that stuff. So it pretty much doesn't compromise on anything except for the garage opener. Unfortunately, they don't make a mirror yet that has the garage opener built into it. I wish they would. If they actually did that, I would pay whatever money it costs. So in the box, you have this rear camera. This is 1080p. So at night, not the best visibility, but during the day, it's honestly great. And at night, you could still see what's happening behind you. It's just not super clear where you could see like license plates and everything. Not like it is in the front where it's actually 4K. This is our power supply cable. We're actually not going to be using any of this stuff. These are actually the rubber straps that attach to the rear view mirror. You can see these hooks over here. That's kind of where you slot it in. And then you put this over your factory mirror and strap it onto the back. And that's how it holds on. That's how it's holding on my car. But again, in this case, we're actually going to be removing the factory mirror and replacing it completely with this. And under here is where you're going to find the screws to which this rear plate mounts. So you'll have to pop off these little rubber pieces and then mount the plate over here. So this GPS attaches to another port that's available on the rear view mirror. And it'll actually give you your speed data. It'll give you your direction that you're heading. And it's kind of handy to have. I probably will install this, but the proper way to install this, I'm just gonna go out and say it right away. The proper way to install this is have this on visible place on the dashboard. So I will be mounting this, but this will likely be either in the A pillar behind the plastic or under the dashboard. I haven't decided yet. The first thing that we're gonna actually do is remove the factory rear view mirror. All it is that little Torx, the T15 that's on the back. You have the little screw that comes out. Just put that there for now. So after you remove the screw, all you have to do is kind of push up over here and it'll start coming out. You're going to get this plastic kind of beauty cover get in your way here because it kind of digs into the headliner. So you might want to pry on it a little bit to kind of get it out of the way. You kind of pry on it and push it off to the side and it comes out over here. And then once you get that out of the way, you should be able to slide this right off. So there you go, it's removed. On the back here, there's a plug that sends power to the rear view mirror. And we just got to get in there, push on it, and take it right out. So that's it. That's all you have to do to remove the factory mirror. So to remove the little pads over here so you could get to the screws, I personally just use this little flathead screwdriver. You really just need to get it started from the side over here. Push hard enough and it'll start coming up. And then you could pry it off the rest of the way with your hands. And those are our little screws over there that we're going to be taking off so that we can attach the rear plate. Which actually reminds me that I didn't mention these screw sizes. You'll need a smaller Phillips to just get that off. And you don't want to lose these tiny screws because we need them, again, to mount the rear view mirror bracket. And when you take that off, you could see here that these little clips that we have for the rubber bands that we're not going to need in this case will just slide right out. That way you could have a cleaner look and not have to keep these on when you don't need them. So now that we have all 4 screws removed, we can attach our rear plate over here. And it doesn't seem like it's directional in any way, which is nice that they did that. And you don't want to over tighten, kind of want to just go until you feel that it's tight enough and just leave it there. This is plastic. These are very small screws, very small screw holes. So you could pretty easily strip this. All right, and just like that, we have our rear plate installed. Now let's install the bracket that'll attach it to the windshield. So in this case, you kind of do have to pay a little bit more attention to the direction of how you mount this. And over here, you could see the label is facing up. You want this to be in this kind of angle, because when you mount this, it's going to attach like to the windshield like this. Just slide onto that part, and then you tighten that screw that you see over there, the Phillips screw. And then you would angle the mirror the rest of the way. We can get our little screws out that came in the kit. So I already got one started over here, and could do the next one over here. Here you could put a little more pressure on since there's a metal kind of insert in there. You can kind of see it over here. And that'll take a lot more force. You still don't have to go crazy, just as long as it's kind of bottoms out. You don't really have to force it any further than that. And just like that, our Wolf box has the attachment on the back with the back plate, and it's ready to be mounted in the car. So I'm going to slide this on here into the groove. I'm going to try something here, guys. I have this 2 plastic clips that are left over from the factory mirror. I want to see if I can somehow utilize them just to make this a little bit cleaner looking. Not only will that cover up the little part of the power plug over here, but also that'll make it look like the factory mirror. It actually lines up really well here. Just to show you guys here what that looks like. There's the plastic clips that I was able to put in, and you could see where it meets up with the metal kind of part of the rear view mirror. And over here, can't see anything. It just slides right into its original home. And essentially, you're tightening this down now, and that'll put the force onto that metal tab that you saw on the windshield. And that's going to keep the rear view mirror in place. You want that to be pretty tight. It is metal on metal, so don't worry about stripping anything too much. So now that we have that attached, the rear view mirror is fully installed. And that's all you need to know, guys. That's pretty much the whole video. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Okay, bye. Just kidding, guys. Obviously, it's not even close to being installed. It's mounted. It's going to look like this. There's really not going to be much else that happens here going forward. But yeah, this is definitely not the final result. One of the reasons why my dad wanted it to be mounted this way, if you notice, is sitting much higher than your original rearview mirror, up to the point where you're sitting here and it's almost obstructed by the headliner. It's kind of hard to tell on camera. This is my eye level over here. But what that does, lens over here will also act as kind of a view to see the very end of your hood. Since this is further forward and higher than your eye elevation, it'll give you a good angle when you're trying to park and you can't see how much space you have in front of you. You're able to actually see that better at this angle. But I'll show you guys what that looks like when I have all the cameras and everything powered on. You'll be able to see what I'm talking about a little bit better. All right, guys, so here comes the most difficult part to show you in the video. This is going to be the driver's footwell fuse box area. And I'm just going to line it up so that you guys can kind of see. And I'll be using the flashlight from the camera itself to kind of show me what I'm looking at. You guys should have a pretty good view of the fuse box now, much better than I do. First things first, you want to remove this cover over here. On the right side, the third fuse down, you could see that it says SIG. SIG is what we're going to be connecting to, and I'll kind of show why. It's a 15 amp fuse. So in order to use this tester properly, you have one alligator clip. This alligator clip, you can't really see it in the video, unfortunately, but there is a metal bolt back here, bolt head. So we're going to attach that alligator clip to the metal bolt head. And with the probe, if I put it on the 15, it's not going to light up. See? Let's just start going down the line and see if we can find something with power. There you go. So we have a 30 amp fuse. This is sunroof. S/roof. Sunroof, I think, is probably the best option. Here it is a 30 amp fuse, so that circuit should have enough power to supply whatever we need. This is, again, the fuse tap that we're going to need. This is the mini fuse. So the way this Hardwire kit is put together, if you look at the wires here, you have a red wire and a yellow wire. Well, not counting the black wire as well. But the red wire, that's for accessory power, meaning when you turn on the car, which would be the cigarette lighter in our case. And the yellow wire is for what has constant power, which that would be to the sunroof in our case, to the 30 amp fuse. So I'm going to need to swap out these ones that, again, don't fit our car. So to swap it out, you kind of just pull on this little rubber grommet here. It's kind of weatherproofing, which is kind of overkill since it's inside the car. But I guess for multiple applications, they just have this available just in case. And these kind of just slot into the groove over here. So you just got to pull it apart and it comes right out. To plug in a new one, same thing in reverse. Just pop it right in. You'll get a click. And then you want to put this smaller weatherproofing on and then the bigger one onto the other side. Fully slide it on as far as it goes. And that's fully weather sealed. All right, so with both sides now connected to power for accessory and battery, we're ready to actually start installing this into the fuse box. Push down this emergency brake just so it's out of my way. That's much better. All right, yeah, so this fuse puller unfortunately won't work for our purposes. There's just not enough space in these grooves here because these fuses are so small for these kind of teeth to get in there. So we're going to just use regular pliers, or, you know, something that I've never tried before. You can try and use this alligator clip that I was just using. for my tester. And that actually worked out really well. So if you have a tester like that, just use the alligator clip. It gives a really good bite and it could easily pull out the fuse without causing any damage to it. So it's a 30 amp fuse. And we're going to pop that into this side over here. Direction doesn't really matter when it comes to fuses. So this is the screw that I'm telling you guys about. Let's see if I can get a fix on it. There it is. So that's the screw. It's behind the plastic trim right below the fuse box. I'm just gonna take off that screw and attach the ground to there. So there are actually two screws over here if you look for this trim piece, and it'll make things much easier to get in there. There's another screw right there, kind of hidden away. So I'm gonna remove those two. Okay, there's another tab over here in the middle. Just push on that clip, and this comes right down. All right, so with that out of the way, now I can definitely get my socket on there. It's gonna make things much easier. Also, we know that this is a good ground since we had the probe on there, the alligator side, and we were getting power on the other side. So you don't have to worry about that. I'm actually gonna remove this sunroof part since it has constant power right now, and I don't want it to arc with us attaching to the ground because it's going to be a little bit of finagling to get it in the right spot. But now we can work on routing the cables so that they go to a good spot. You can't mount this on moving components because with time it's going to move. It might chafe the cable and you might end up just losing power one day. You just put in the pry tool over here and you can pry open this kind of panel on the side over here. Put enough force kind of to the side, you'll be able to get in there. And then you could see the wiring over here from the inside. I'm going to push up the cable that's going to be going to our rear view mirror, the power cable. I'm going to route it through over here just so I can get some tension on it. So you can see the cable there, kind of out of focus. Trying to do this with one hand here. Try and twist the cable with your fingers, and then it'll kind of go into the direction that you want it to go. So I'm just going to reach in here and grab it the rest of the way. There you go. All right, so I was able to get the little battery protector over here to where I removed the trim panel earlier. This is in a pretty good spot because over here we actually have a little metal loop, and I can just zip tie directly to this metal loop. All right, guys, so this is kind of the trick that I use when I need to zip tie something and I can't get to it. I got it close to that metal loop over here, the cable, and I put it through the metal loop. So now with the cable kind of fixed in place, I'll be able to wrap the zip tie around over there and then pull out the excess, and it'll be right in the spot where you need it to be. All right, guys, so I was able to get the zip tie in place. As you can see, it's around that cable over there. Now I can cut the remainder off here. And then when you're snaking this back out, that's it. It's kind of off to the side. You can kind of push that away so it's less twisted. And you got a clean cable connection right there with everything routed out of the way. Can't even see it. Other plug over here. See how it's crossing over this cable? We don't want that. Here's a perfect example of what not to do. Learn from my mistakes, people. Learn from my mistakes. It'll make things so much easier when you actually go in to install this yourself. So be honest, guys, who picked it up from the video? Who picked it up that I actually took out the wrong fuse? So from the 15 amp cigarette lighter fuse, it was the third one. But because my visibility was just horrible, I pulled out the first one. So it's no big deal. I just swapped over that fuse from the cigarette lighter to the first port that I originally took out. All right, that's our wiring. So the cover kind of loops around that metal tab that's in the distance. I don't know if you guys can see that, but it's kind of like a metal hook that you have to hang it on. It's only on one side as far as I can tell. There's no other metal hook. Once you have that on, then you can pop this clip back in place. And there is a second kind of hook that you gotta attach it to. It's right by where the light is. That looks to be good. Over by the light here, you see you have that metal tab that you kind of have to slot into. And then you have below the fuse box another metal tab right there. Then you have the screw that I showed before, one over here and one over there. And those are the 4 points that kind of hold this up, not counting also the clip that's in the middle right there. That's also holding it up. All right, guys, so what I ended up doing was I actually routed the cables a little bit differently, and we're getting a little too close to this handbrake assembly, well, e-brake assembly over here. So I kind of routed them along the plastic over here, and for them to go away. And I put the zip tie in here just in case, so that with time they don't like move around and don't get caught in the e-brake mechanism, because that'll either lock up the e-brake or it'll completely destroy the wire. So we don't want any of that happening. So now what I'll be doing is actually routing this cable over here to go along the A-pillar and behind the headliner and then go to the rear view mirror. So it can be a little bit tricky to get in here to just start out. Personally, I like to just take the easiest route. So we can go along here. So we're kind of pushing up on this little rubber sleeve here. I see some people just putting it into the rubber sleeve like that and forgetting about it. For the most part, that'll work fine, but I want to keep everything sitting as factory as possible. So to go that extra step, you really want to kind of pry up on the trim under the rubber sleeve and then try and put the cable in there. Once you get it going, you could actually just push it with your finger and it'll go in there. So you can see that it's actually going under the plastic panel and behind there. This trim piece is bigger, so there's more flex in it. And because of that, it's just easier to kind of pull it away where you need it to go and get it the rest of the way. Keep in mind also when working on your headliner and touching it, anything that's dirty will show up very well on a light headliner like this one, like this tan one. So I'm gonna go ahead and plug this power cable over here to the top of the screen. I don't think it's actually going to come on since I have the doors open here and it's in battery saver mode. Yeah. So it's not going to come on, but that's going to give me the idea of how much cable I actually need, so I could route this more properly so that we don't have this ugly cable just kind of hanging in the way. Putting the wire along here, nice and taut, and then getting back to the A-pillar over here, I'm able to kind of make a wedge and put the remaining wire that's left over into the A-pillar. So what we can do right now, make sure that it actually works. So with the car started, right now we're only going to get the front view. There you go, there's the Wolfbox logo. And we should be able to see the front of the camera right now. It would help if you remove this little film back here covering the lens. You can see now that you could see the very end of the hood. Whereas when you're sitting here and driving, this is kind of the real view that you're getting, and you see the front right there. Once I have the rear camera installed, you're able to actually have both views at the same time if you really wanted to. We're going to be plugging in the GPS unit and I'll be installing it in the A-pillar. So it's kind of out of the way. So if you guys put in your pry tool over here and kind of just push out a little bit, you'll be able to get your fingers in here and you can just pull this A-pillar out of the way. You won't really be affecting the airbag. You're not messing with the wire or anything. And the wire shouldn't really get in the way of the airbag. With the amount of force that it comes out, it'll probably rip that wire to shreds, to be honest. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the GPS unit kind of on this flat part here. It's pretty level. It's pretty level in here in the A-pillar, so should be able to mount this like this, far down enough where it won't get in the way of anything, and kind of route our cable the same way we have the power cable routed. All right, guys, so the GPS unit is tucked away. I have it literally right over here, so you can kind of see it. The reason there's a bit of a gap there is because it's pushing up against the airbag over here. Nothing to worry about. It's not going to get in the way of the airbag deploying. It's also not going to affect the airbag in any way. It's only just causing this little gap over here in the trim. So the last component of our install here is the rear camera. You can see here, this is the camera itself, and there's only a short wire that goes from the camera to the rest of the wiring harness. So for simplicity's sake, for the install, I would say just disconnect this part and just remove the camera completely until you're down to the very last step where you can plug it in and just stick this on to wherever you're going to be permanently mounting this. So I'm going to leave this off to the side for now and just focus on the wiring itself. So So for this next part, I have the final connector over here. This is for the rear camera. I have the wire going to the same location over here, routing through here, where the A-pillar and the roof liner meets. And then instead of going down like the other two wires, I'm going to be going along this way and follow this line all the way to the rear over there. And then kind of come out on the tailgate. It's the same principles with the A-pillar. Just going to be prying up in areas like this so I can get the wire in there and along the doors over here. All right, guys. So when you get to bends like this, where you have the B-pillar over here, the plastic trim, and you have to go around into the roof, what helps is actually having two of these plastic pry tools, which one will come with the Hardwire kit and one will come with the rear view mirror like you saw earlier. So it's good to have one that kind of wedges the space, and then the other one you can use to put in the wire into that space. It's kind of hard to do with your fingers just because there's a lot of tension on these places where the two panels are coming together. Sometimes this rubber seal folds over and that'll really get in the way. So you're gonna make sure it doesn't fold into the headliner like that. And that's it. You're literally just moving the pry tool along and the cable is going exactly where it needs to go. All right, so you've got your cable all the way to the back here, and you got to get it through this corrugation here. There's a few options. You could literally go through any of these. This one would actually be a little bit better now that I'm feeling it. So when you push down on it, you'll be able to feel how much space is available within the corrugation. We have this mechanism here, but it works on this kind of lever. So this is the highest point at which it's going to be in. When you're going through here, it shouldn't really impact this at all. So I'm going to put it through over here. Kind of jump over this mechanism. We need our cable to also, all of this cable to go over to the other side. Use your plastic pry tool. And this is kind of just like a grommet that's fit in there. We pop that out. So there are clips that hold the headliner in place here in the back. So you just pull down. It'll come down. Don't pull too hard because if you come to a really sharp point, the headliner will have permanent damage. Try to use a sharp razor. We can retape that once we install everything. But now we got our opening. So we need constant power over here in the back. That way it's also recording in the back always. All right, so this looks like a ground. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put my probe right up against the metal connectors, see if I'm getting power. So you guys remember when I said it was the hardest part to get the wiring in the footwell? I think this might be harder. And your wife comes over and says, "What's taking you so long? I thought you were gonna be done in like 20 minutes. Well, I learned my lesson, fellas. I just don't give a time anymore. It's literally just because anything in a project can get in the way and it's gonna take just so much more time. So we found our constant power. So there's a brown little wire at this big plug at the end here. And just to show you guys which wire I'm talking about, you could already kind of tell what kind of a mess it is to get in here. But behind this thick wiring harness, that wire right there, right next to my thumb, that brown wire is constant power going to the rear. So if you're interested in wiring anything in the back of an RX 350, this is a 2013, that's the wire that you would need if you want constant power. So to tap into the power source from that brown wire that we found, we're going to be using this right here. This is a wire tap where you get one end that passes through. That's going to be for our brown wire. And the other end that kind of comes to a dead end. That's going to be for the wire that we need for the camera power. So we'll just put it right through there to hit it at that dead end. You take pliers and you force this down. And what it's going to do is it's going to tap into that channel. Once you have that force down, you could clip this over, close it down. This is like a folding kind of latch. You can close it down and you'll be good to go. You don't really need to do any weatherproofing again because this is in the trunk inside the car within the headliner. So what's going to end up making this install a little bit easier is you can kind of get the wire tap in place by pressing down slightly on that metal clip that's going to dig into the wire. But essentially that's in. And now I just got to push it down with the pliers. All right, guys, so now that we have power coming from that plug over there to our wire, and our wire is connected to the rear view camera,
we can then try and plug this in and see if we're getting a feed. If we are, then we're good, and we can continue on the installation and kind of route these cables. So be careful when you're plugging this in. It is keywayed, so you have this groove over here that needs to line up with the notch in here. So make sure you don't kind of cross it in any way and damage the plug. All right, so moment of truth, guys. Should be able to get a feed from the rear. I'm actually going to pull this off right now. There's our rear feed. So that's my pliers in the trunk. That's what you're seeing. And then when you flip through it, you're seeing the front and the rear, and this is both front and rear. But that's perfect. That means we got good power going there, and we're all set to continue with the installation and kind of routing the cables. So in order to route the cable here through this factory corrugation, we're actually going to have to pull this other part out. This one you could probably do by hand. It's a plastic clip over here. This has plenty of space for us to go through. And what we're going to do is we're going to take our connector here on this side, and we're going to feed it up through the grommet. A zip tie, especially a long one like this, basically what you're doing is you're pushing it all the way through the corrugation. Since the zip tie is slimmer and flat, it's much easier to get it through. There we go. We've also used coat hangers in the past. If you don't have a long zip tie, you could use one of those old metal wire coat hangers. The end is literally right here, guys. I could see the end. It's just, I just can't grab it with my fingers. There you go. Nice. Okay. We got it. We got it. All right. So now that we have this attached, this will make this so much more easier. I like this fabric tape for this kind of job just because it's smoother, and it'll be easier for this to run across rubber as opposed to electrical tape where it's rubber on rubber. And the way we're going to wrap this up, first, I'm going to wrap up the end of the zip tie here. Now that I have that wrapped, I'm going to fold the zip tie. That's going to give us a good anchor point so that this doesn't slide off. Next, I want this to be kind of in line like this so that it doesn't go all over the place. That's going to also give us pulling force onto this connector. So if we wrap this nice and tight, it doesn't have to be perfect to begin with, but you want it to be nice and tight. One, so that this zip tie edge here doesn't stick up. Because it'll kind of impede our movement, but also so that this doesn't slide out, because we are going to be putting a pretty good amount of force behind this to get it through. So basically we have the zip tie where it's folded over. I can kind of feel it here. It goes kind of in a U shape over here, pressed all the way up against where that connector meets the wires. What that's going to do is as I'm pulling, this will actually force this connector to go straight along with this, as opposed to having just the zip tie in line with the connector. And if you pull too hard, the zip tie will just slide out from under the tape and you're left with just the connector stuck in there. Then you also want this, both ends of the connector to be fully covered up like this, so it doesn't snag on anything. So you really want like a smooth, straight flow, because you could see here that it's pretty thick, even though we have a lot of space in here. So we're just pulling on this end. So now I'm sliding the corrugations behind the connector as I'm forcing the connector out. That way we'll have less resistance. There you go. That's it. All of this you can pretty much remove now. You're not going to need it anymore. What we're going to do now is actually pry off this panel here. No screws anywhere, so. There you go. Once it gets started, it'll go the rest of the way. There you go. Sounds intimidating when it's popping like that, but it's honestly meant to do that. One of the clips stayed behind, but the rest of them, well, two of the clips stayed behind, but the rest of them came right out. So, I got our plug here. And all I'm gonna do is just snake it through over here. So again, I want to mount this in the middle over here. So So this is gonna have to go over that trim piece and kind of mount over here. So that's more than enough. Pretty beefy zip tie for what we're doing here, but why not? So let's get this camera plugged in, put this piece back on. Just gonna droop it over like that, just so I can get a gauge of where this is gonna go. Okay, that's great, thank you. All right, we got one clip at least in place over there. So we got our handy little double tape. It's in the same form as this metal bracket over here. Personally, I'm just not a big fan of using screws. Now, if some of you guys noticed, yes, those are this side, and on that side, my dad literally mounted, I don't know, coat hangers or something. And that's literally what he uses when he's like, when he does shopping and he needs to hang up bags. So, you know, my dad doesn't really care so much about that. All right, so I think that's going to be our position. And we're going to work our way over, making sure all these clips are lined up. Doesn't seem to be lined up properly here. There you go. And this grommet really has seen better days now. It's perfectly fine until we disrupted it. It's just enjoying its life, not being abused, not being twisted around or bullied by anyone. And then its peaceful existence has just been brought to an end. Anyway, so now I'm just wrapping up the remaining wire for the backup camera, for the rear view camera, just so it's a little bit cleaner. Yeah, nobody's gonna see this. It's just so it's easier to hide away in here and not wobbling around. With time, these wires can, you know, if you just leave them, they'll kind of find their own way somewhere, and they always find their way to the place where they rattle and make the most noise. If you can, avoid it at all costs. And that's it, fellas. That's all she wrote. Grommet's in place, wiring is done, pretty much all clean everywhere. Yeah, so sometimes this tailgate gets stuck. I did reconnect everything. So if you're like me, guys, and don't pay attention to very simple things. So I put all this back together, and maybe some of you noticed, maybe you didn't, but that white plug on the end there did not reconnect it. And I closed the hatch. And guess what? No power going to the hatch, couldn't open it. I had to climb in from the back, through the doors over there, put down the seats. And the way you do get it to open is if you look over here, there's a little panel that covers this up. You have this little lock, and you could actually force this over to the side, and this will pop open that latch. So if you do that, don't worry, there's a way for us not very bright people to still be able to get into the trunk after you finish everything. It's no big deal, but don't panic when something like that happens. That's your fix right there. All right, guys, so that's gonna do it for this video. I hope you learned something. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you don't repeat my mistakes. I hope you at least take away that from the video. But definitely hit that like, definitely hit subscribe, comment. I don't know. I'm rambling at this point. I've been doing this for entirely way too long today. Usually it doesn't take me this long to install a backup camera with the with all the wiring and everything. But for whatever reason, today specifically, when I'm in a time crunch and I gotta go and pick up my dad in 15 minutes, that's the day when everything just starts going wrong and a bunch of problems. That's always the issue. But yeah, I'm not gonna ramble anymore. Thanks again, guys, for watching, and I'm gonna close it out, and I'll see you guys out there.